Most people assume World War II soldiers survived the elements using tents. That assumption is wrong. Tents tore in high winds, collapsed under snow, soaked through in heavy rain, and, well, broadcasted heat loss in freezing conditions. Armies learned quickly that canvas alone was not enough. Across multiple fronts, soldiers and engineers turned to a shelter method so effective that it routinely outperformed tents, survived storms, and quietly saved lives. It wasn't advanced technology. It was smart use of earth, timber, and physics. This shelter hack kept men alive when supply lines failed and weather turned deadly. The fact that most civilians have never heard of it says more about modern forgetfulness than wartime ingenuity. Why World War II exposed the limits of tents as survival shelters. Tents were fast to deploy, but speed came at a cost. Canvas offered little insulation, trapped moisture, and failed under prolonged stress. In North Africa, heat baked tents into ovens. In Europe, rain and mud turned them into cold traps. In the Eastern Front, snow and wind shredded them entirely. Commanders didn't abandon tents because they wanted comfort. They did it because men were freezing, sick, and dying. Out of sheer necessity, soldiers rediscovered the value of earth-covered shelters. The solution, you see, wasn't something new at all. It was really old knowledge, revived under the intense pressure of survival. So, soldiers would dig into the ground, frame the space with timber or whatever salvaged material they could find, and then cover it all with layers of earth. These weren't elaborate bunkers by any means. They were just practical, quickly built dugouts meant to shield from wind, rain, shrapnel, and those punishing temperature extremes. Earth shelters, well, they stabilized temperature almost instantly. Underground, the environment stayed cooler when it was hot outside and warmer when it was cold. Storms could rage overhead, but nothing got torn loose down below. So, why did earth insulation outperform canvas in every climate? Well, soil is a natural insulator, isn't it? Just a few feet of earth could block wind entirely and slow heat transfer dramatically. In freezing weather, body heat and even small stoves were enough to keep dugouts livable. When it was wet, raised sleeping platforms kept the men dry, while the surrounding earth absorbed any excess moisture. Unlike tents, earth shelters didn't flap, didn't leak, and certainly didn't announce their presence to the enemy. Timber framing made these shelters, both strong and quick to construct. Most World War II earth shelters relied on pretty simple framing methods. People used logs, planks, or even scavenged beams to support the roof. Sometimes corrugated metal, old doors, or, believe it or not, even vehicles were pressed into service as spanning material. Then earth was piled on top, adding weight and locking everything firmly in place. The end result was a structure that could resist wind, heavy snow loads, and even nearby explosions far better than any tent ever could. Now, these shelters saved lives for reasons that went well beyond simple comfort. Shelter isn't just about keeping dry, after all. It's about maintaining your core temperature, reducing fatigue, and preventing illness. Cold, wet soldiers lose their effectiveness really fast. Earth shelters reduced exposure, conserved precious energy, and allowed for better sleep. In those long campaigns, that meant fewer casualties, without a single shot being fired. How ventilation and drainage made the difference between safety and disaster. These shelters were not sealed holes, you know. Builders understood airflow. A small vent prevented smoke build-up, while drainage trenches diverted water away. Raised floors or platforms kept bedding off the damp ground. These details mattered, absolutely. Poor drainage flooded shelters, and bad ventilation suffocated occupants. The best dugouts followed simple but strict rules. How this World War II shelter hack can still be applied today. This knowledge is highly relevant for survivalists, campers and off-grid builders. In storm-prone areas, a shallow earth shelter with timber framing provides more protection than modern tents. Digging into a slope reduces excavation, and using local materials minimizes transport. So, steps matter. Choose high ground, that's important. Dig below the frost line if possible. Frame the roof strong enough to hold earth. Add drainage first, shelter second. Ventilation comes last. This is not primitive. It's practical engineering. So, why does modern survival culture so often overlook what actually works? You see, modern gear marketing tends to favour portability and speed, but honestly, speed doesn't always equal resilience. The Second World War proved, without a doubt, that real shelter prioritises stability, insulation and longevity over mere convenience. Earth shelters, well, they aren't exactly flashy. They're not something you can just pack into a bag. But when conditions turn hostile, they actually work. What does this forgotten shelter really teach us about preparedness? You know, preparedness isn't about simply owning more gear. It's about understanding your environment, your materials, and even the physics at play. Soldiers in the Second World War survived because they adapted to their circumstances, not because they just waited around for more supplies. Earth-covered shelters worked so well because they used what was available and turned the ground itself into protection. If this deep dive into forgotten wartime survival knowledge has, well, added value to your understanding of history and preparedness, do consider subscribing to the channel for more serious, research-driven content. And please share this video with fellow history enthusiasts and survival-minded viewers. These lessons were, quite literally, paid for in blood, and they absolutely deserve to be remembered.